variance of 134 feet. The maximum length of the cul-de-sac is determined by tier. So the county is divided into 3 tiers. This property is located in the urban services tier. That tier tends to be the areas closer to the cities, and that maximum for this tier is 1,000 feet. Now, for the other 2 tiers, the natural resources tier and the rural low density tier, they allow a cul-de-sac 1,600 feet or less. In addition, in the land development code, it states that in this tier, the cul-de-sac can be 1,000 feet or less, and it also states that it could be lessened to the adjacent city's requirements, either the city or the fire district. In this case, this property is served by Kearney Fire District, so we researched Kearney's maximum cul-de-sac length. Currently, their maximum cul-de-sac length is 500 feet unless a larger cul-de-sac is approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. We also researched the history of this regulation. So we're currently on our 2011 Land Development Code, which is where the regulation comes from. Both the 2011 and 2003 Land Development Code had that 1,000-foot maximum for the urban services tier. The 2000 code, it was actually less. It was 800 feet. And then we're going to talk about the Woodland subdivision a little bit here in a minute. When that subdivision was approved, which is where this cul-de-sac is coming from, that plat was recorded in 1969. And so we went back to the 1961 subdivision regulations, and that code did not talk about cul-de-sacs at all. It talked about block length, and the maximum block length was 1,200 feet. And when that plat was recorded, it met those requirements, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Mr. Beggs talked about the 4 variance criteria. These are the 4 criteria that the board reviews, and the applicant must show that they meet these 4 criteria. So I typically don't like to read slides, but I'm going to read this slide. The first criteria is the requested variance arises from conditions that are unique to the subject property, that are not ordinarily found in the same zoning district, and that are not a result of the owner's intentional action. Second criteria is the granting of the permit for the variance will not be contrary to the public interest and will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents. Third criteria is the strict application of the provisions of which a variance is requested will constitute a practical difficulty upon the property owner represented in the application. And I will just remind the board that we changed practical difficulty from hardship. So that was changed probably 3 years ago. And the fourth criteria talks about the variance desired will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or general welfare, nor destroy the intent of the comprehensive plan. And again, the Land Development Code is very clear on this. Those criteria must be met for a variance to be approved. So with this case, we reached out to a couple outside agencies that we thought were affected by this. That included the Clay County Highway Department. They gave us comments that they would approve allowing the cul-de-sac over the maximum length, but if that variance is approved as part of the platting process, they may request additional right-of-way from the property owner to make sure that what that platting would do would not inhibit any development in the future. We also reached out to the Kearney Fire District. They would request that the cul-de-sac be big enough to allow their vehicles to access it. We always make sure we do that with our platting, so that's not a big concern for us because our code has a minimum radius for that cul-de-sac, and that they also gave comments that they would request that fire hydrants be installed if this variance is approved, and that would be part of the platting process as well. Some additional information before we look at the plats. A letter and plat were submitted by the applicant to support their request. Planning and zoning staff did receive opposition from an adjacent property owner. And then criteria number 4, if we go back to the variance criteria, it talks about destroying the intent of the comprehensive plan. If the board finds that the 4 criteria have been met, staff does not have concern that this variance would destroy the intent of the comprehensive plan. And as just a reminder to the board, The BZA may impose conditions on a variance if it's deemed necessary to eliminate or minimize any potential or adverse impacts or to carry out the purpose of the Land Development Code. And then I want to show you the aerial and a couple plats. So this parcel, along with this one, are the property that we're talking about. This is the Woodland subdivision to the south, and I'm going to zoom in on this area right here. So here is the existing cul-de-sac. There is right-of-way that is dedicated from the end of that cul-de-sac to the south property line. So this was set up to, that street was put there, that right-of-way was put there for future development. Now I'm going to also show you the plat, because the plat does not match how it exists out there. So if I go to the plat, you can see it doesn't show that temporary cul-de-sac, and it shows the right-of-way going all the way to that north property line. As to why that happened, if we were doing that today, we would try to take that street all the way to that southern property line. So if I zoom out, I want to show you a couple other things. I mentioned earlier that the maximum block length when this plat was recorded was 1,200 feet. If we measure from roughly the midpoint of the intersecting street to this property line, it's somewhere right around 1,100 feet. So it was less than the 1,200, which was allowed by the 61 subdivision regulations. And that is how we measure. We measure cul-de-sac length from the midpoint of the closest intersecting street to the midpoint of the cul-de-sac, which would be right in this point. And that's how the engineer came up with the 1,134 feet, or the variance request of 134 feet. And I do want to address, so why do we have this regulation? It's basically, staff's opinion is we have this, we limit the length of the cul-de-sacs to have the convenient flow of traffic and to have more effective police and fire protection. We don't want to have a cul-de-sac that's a mile long where there's no place for, just general traffic or emergency personnel to turn around. Now, I don't have a great answer for why do we allow a 1,000-foot cul-de-sac in the urban services tier and you're allowed a 1,600-foot cul-de-sac in the other two tiers. My guess is that the other two tiers are less densely populated, but to me, that's something we maybe should reconsider when we do the land development code. I think it probably should be consistent with the 3 tiers. So I'm not sure I hit everything there, but that's kind of a summary of the case, and I would be happy to answer any questions that the board members have.
Chairman Jones, can you go back to, or Director Jones, can you go back to that aerial view where you had, was that floodplain that you had pulled up on the aerial?
Yes, let me get back to it. So anything, and my map's slow, but I'll
Would you highlight
zoom
that
out.
parcel one more time?
So anything in blue is floodplain. Here's the south portion of it. So there's some floodplain along the wooded area here. And then this is where that second blue line stream comes across, and it has some floodplain in it as well. And the one thing I didn't address, and I should have, was the plat. So the purpose of extending this cul-de-sac would be to extend it here, and there would be 3 lots, if I zoom out, coming off that cul-de-sac. There'd be a total of 4 lots. Lot 1 here would still have access off of A highway because that's where the existing single family is. And then there would be additional lots coming off that cul-de-sac.
Mr. Briggs, question about the fire hydrants. Are there currently fire hydrants in the development?
That's a good question that I don't know the answer to. I would doubt.
I know the answer, I live there, no, there are not.
Okay, well, you'll have a chance to say that.
Okay, and if fire hydrants are required, who will be responsible for installing them?
So the developer would be responsible for installing them.
Not the current property owners in that development?
No, the applicant tonight, who would be the developer, will be responsible for putting in the additional road and all the other infrastructure that's required. And I will add that, you know, we look at everything, all the infrastructure as part of the planning and zoning case. So we'll include the water district, the highway, fire again. And if there becomes any issues with the hydrants, then we'll have to work that issue out with the water district and the fire district.
That's fine. I was just concerned about the financial burden, if there was one.
Any other questions from the board for staff?
Is this a recently purchased property, or did someone inherit it?
I believe the applicant tonight purchased it recently, but they can provide some more information on that.
My land lot showed as a Lee and Laura Brown.
Yeah, that is not the current owner. My map shows that as well, and mine hasn't been updated. We have a deed from the applicant showing that they purchased the property.
Any other questions from the board for staff?
I just have one question, just for clarification. So this would allow 3 more lots to drive into, or 4 more lots?
This would allow them to extend that cul-de-sac an additional 134 feet over the 1,000 foot. I can't, at this point, I don't want to say this is 3 or 4 lots, because if they can get, right now it's currently 3 lots, but if they can get a 4th lot off that
Okay.
cul-de-sac and meet the county regulations, then they would be allowed to do that.
Okay.
Well, Director Jones, you're showing 4 lots on the plot plan, though.
4 lots with one, but one is accessed off of A highway. So 3 off the cul-de-sac, 1 off of A highway.
Oh, okay.
Why can't they come off the cul-de-sac?
I suppose they could, but they have an existing driveway off of A highway.
Okay.
And it's my understanding that MoDOT will not, site distance is very limited in this area, and the only thing MoDOT would allow is a shared driveway through the existing driveway for 1 lot.
Okay. Any other questions from staff? I'd like to have the applicant come forward, state your name, address for the record.
Good evening, Steve Warger, 6127 Northwest Pine Ridge Circle, Parkville, Missouri. I'm the engineer on the project that we're here to talk about tonight. And again, as Mr. Jones has covered that pretty well, but we're here tonight for a variance for the cul-de-sac length. And the purpose of the variance is currently that length, as Skip had pointed out, is approximately, let's say, 1,083 feet if you go from the intersection to the north property line of the subdivision south of us, or to our south line. And we're going 34 more feet into basically our circle with the cul-de-sac is where that's coming from. We looked at this, we've done quite a few different layouts, trying to go through this, trying to decide how we want to do this. The complexity is, and just a little correction, we did get another determination from MoDOT that they will not let even a shared drive. It'll just be one drive on the existing house. And to your point, even though it's a planning deal, they can come in off the cul-de-sac if they wanted to, as far as a traffic type thing. And they may wish to do that if it were approved at planning and zoning. The real thing with this, as far as the difficulty is, as you can see, that the creeks and the floodplains and the surrounding properties, to try and develop this, even if we wanted to go to smaller lots, which basically, from our other last BZA case I was here with, we had a big 5 acres unless you have a current one. To do a 5-acre lot or any layout, in the end, you're coming back to the same point, which means you're still over 1,100 feet. So it's not a self-imposed deal. You'll still have that length of one-way, or actually one-way in, one-way out traffic. And that's basically with the cul-de-sacs, and I do enough in other cities and all, that's their whole gist is one, not to have a fire at one end and an ambulance at the other, or in some cases, it's more just so they don't have to back their fire trucks out any farther because they get stuck in those. So our variance request today is basically the fact that this is where the road, and it's not actually there yet, we'll have to build that road to our north property line and then build the cul-de-sac. But that's where it is now. That was determined previously and not by us. And so we're here just to ask for that variance to be able to build that road and do our cul-de-sac. And then we will have to, although it's another thing, but we will have to extend water, those type of things. We'll have to meet those requirements based on planning and zoning determinations.
So I'm curious about the large tract in the back, the 107 acres. What I don't want to see happen is that 106 acres be split up in a bunch more lots, and then all of a sudden you've got a whole bunch more traffic on that. So what is the plan for the 106 acres in the back?
One single-family lot to maintain. The owners want to maintain that. And I think kind of to head off into planning and zoning just a little bit, if I may, is I know the comment from the highway department and also planning staff has said, how would this eventually lay out? And
Right.
maybe there would be something, I think we've talked about, I think the highway department said, right of way. I'm not sure we want to do right of way, but if we get our variance tonight, we will start working with staff and a planning wise to determine how that maybe there's a deed restriction or something that says if this is ever divided up, you must connect, or this is how that road would connect and allow for that.
How would you do that?
Well, right now, it would be pretty difficult because there's no roads there to connect to.
Right.
And then you looked at the floodplain issue, the one to the south and to the east is pretty big, but you can't cross it with a bridge, but you're talking about expense. The one to the north is still a pretty good sized stream, and that may be more of a possibility. But there is really nothing coming to us to invite us to do that. And that's kind of my point I was trying to point out before. We could try and lay something out, but if we build all those streets, now we've only got more cul-de-sacs that are, because we have no real other way to get in and out of it. And MoDOT's not excited about that driveway, especially shared. They're sure as heck not gonna want us to bring 25, 30 lots out on the thing and make that traffic. And again, if you get to that point, even if we would connect to that drive, by the time you get back to the east side of the property, you're over 1,000 feet again. So until there's something developed on the other side, I think this is pretty well limited, or it may be many years down the road when I know I'm not doing this anymore, that where they can afford to justify that for the price of the land and the development costs.
Does the board have any other questions for the applicant?
You want to say anything?
Hold on, give me just a minute.
Well, she's
She's,
the applicant.
okay, you have
She's the
something to
owner.
add?
She's the owner.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't know a whole lot about. oh,
State your
sorry.
name and address, please.
I'm Shannon Stumpenhouse, and I'm at 12419A Highway, Liberty, Missouri, 64068. So Steve's helping guide me through all this, because I don't know all the rules and all the different things, but I just want to give you just the personal background of why we're here in the first place, which you guys might not care about, but you guys might care. So I just, Sure. So we initially bought the parcel to eventually build on it. I had no idea how difficult it was going to be. Kip loves to tell me how difficult this piece of
We
property is.
told you how difficult it was gonna be.
Well, I didn't know. So, but yes, you did tell me. So we've tried to explore a lot of different avenues, and A Highway truly is not safe there. Like, I live in that farmhouse right now, and it is really hard to pull out, and it is, I would not ever want to put anything else off of there. So Fishing River Road is another access point to get there, and when I looked at the plat and realized the road was supposed to go all the way to the end anyway, I thought, well, how does that happen, and what can we do to make it go all the way to the end? And when I bought this property, even though I'm a realtor and I should know better, I didn't realize that when you want to make all these changes, you're the developer, so I get to put in fire hydrants, and I get to finish streets, and I get to repave roads, and I get to put in culverts and bridges and all this different stuff just to be able to access the property. My intent is to keep as much of it as I can, but I'm going to hopefully sell off a couple lots at the end of the cul-de-sac to help pay for all of this stuff that I'm going to have to do to even be able to do this, because I think I'm going to have to end up even paving some of Fishing River Road and Woodland that are existing to even get them to allow me to push it 34 feet onto my property. So even though we're only talking about the variance today, there's a lot of different things that have come into all of this that has ultimately brought us to this point, thinking that this is the best plan of action. So we've tried everywhere, and I have no intention of connecting it all the way across. I mean, I figure there's a river there. I mean, I didn't even think about that, but I have now realized you all think about that and have to think about it because of 100 years down the road. So when I meet with the highway department, if they tell me I've got to do this and that to make it easier, and I can't put my house on this exact spot because that would block them from 100 years putting in another road, I'll work with them as much as I can, because my intent is to never do that. But I understand somebody might 50 or 75 years down the road. So, we'll work with it whatever we can, but, that's how we got to this point. And so especially, because like when I initially talked to you, I think I said one lot and, the house. Well, that changed because that's only 6 acres, and that would also require a variance, which I don't think is something that would be approved. So then we kind of had to go to Plan B and Plan C and Plan D, and this is Plan Z, I guess. But anyway, so if anybody has any questions for me or what our intent is or why we're doing this, I am a homeowner turned developer for just a short period of time, and I plan on going back to a homeowner very quickly and getting out of the development business.
What is the reason that you can't go out to A Highway to the west from the cul-de-sac as opposed to through the Fishing River Road?
So the Missouri Highway Department will not allow any additional entrances on any of my frontage property, all the way from the north, all the way to the south, to have any additional entrances off of A Highway. They won't grant one. That was the very first thing we did, because we were planning on just going to having one more driveway off of A Highway to access our property. That was the original plan. They won't grant it. And honestly, from living there now, I see why they won't, because it is really dangerous. Like, he told me they would not approve that today if it was going to be approved, but of course, it's been there for years and years.
Yeah, it's just you're going to go out on A Highway either way. I mean, it is an extra entrance, but going down through the cul-de-sac and out is also
Right, but
going
my
onto
brother
A Highway.
actually lives in the other neighborhood, and we go back and forth to his property a lot, and truly, coming out on Woodland to A Highway is a completely different experience than coming out of my driveway onto A Highway. Because there's a hill right on the north side of the driveway, and so you kind of have to sit there and you have to count to 10 before you pull out, because there could be a car coming up the hill that you can't see. So it's honestly easier to pull out at night, because at least you have lights coming at you. Checking the mail is also a really fun thing on that highway. But, so now that I live there, I understand why it wouldn't be allowed, and I wouldn't want, I kind of hate that the farmhouse has to even access off of that, but that's why at the cul-de-sac, the intent isn't to put another driveway to that, but if they have a property that abuts it and they want to put in a driveway, I guess they could probably do that, so that they don't have to get on A Highway there either. But, yeah, that's where we're at.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
There is a way around it that's impossible. You've got to buy somebody else's easement and you can move it. But there's no way.
Do you have something you want to add? Oh, no.
If you can find somebody willing to sell the easement off the road, you can buy it and they'll let you use it. And move it.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the highway department is not going to allow it.
Correct. The highway
The
department,
highway department is the one you're gonna do, I mean, you buy it from the owner, if somebody's willing to give one up, no one along there will give one up. And the cost would be astronomical.
Do you know what the sight distance is, the maximum along that hole? Is it really low? I haven't-
it's really
Less than
difficult.
200 feet?
Yeah, it's really difficult through there,
Anywhere.
yeah.
I drive it almost every day. It's low. I mean-
It's very difficult, and
Yeah.
again, kind of to Mr. Morris's point, you know, even if we could come out there, by the time we extend back and stop at our property line on the west or on the east, we're still going to be over 1,000 foot on some sort of a cul-de-sac to make future connections. So in the end, I think it's somewhat
Yeah.
the same thing.
Any other questions for the applicant from staff? Okay, I'll open it up for public comment. Are there anyone that wants to ask any general questions, not opposing or supporting, just general questions about the application? Anybody? Okay, yeah, feel free.
My name is Kevin Rodert. My property is on the right or the east, the second one from where the variance is requested, where the pond is located on this side. I have a couple concerns, but the one thing I'm asking is what is preventing, if this goes in and it's approved, what's preventing there being more houses built than the one that's existing and 3 more? I understand it's zoned agricultural at this point in time, so it's not zoned residential. But what's preventing it from, instead of there being a total of 4 houses on this property, using this new cul-de-sac, what's preventing it from being 50 houses on there when this is all said and done? And I guess that's my
Staff?
first general question.
Yeah, I would love to answer that
Would you
one.
like to address that?
Yeah, so, I mean, if this variance is approved, it only allows them to extend that cul-de-sac an additional 134 feet past the 1,000-foot maximum. So you can't get 50 houses off a cul-de-sac, because each house would have to have road frontage, and they're not approved for enough of a variance to get that many houses. Now, as I stated, they might be able to squeeze an extra lot in there, but those lots physically have to touch that cul-de-sac at a wide enough point to get a driveway.
What's the width that it has to be off the cul-de-sac?
The code doesn't tell us that. So as long as highway department would issue a permit, then it would be allowed. Now, keep in mind, there's also, if this is approved, there's also going to be a planning and zoning commission and county commission public hearing, and that part of that is where they present their plat, which once they present that plat, they're tied into that. So if it shows the 4 lots that we're kind of discussing tonight, then they're tied into that. And if they ever want to change that, they would have to come back with a new case.
Okay. So basically, that's to be determined at a future date.
It is, but the 50 houses can't happen because there's not near enough road frontage. I can't imagine highway, and I don't want to put numbers on it, but generally you get 3 or 4 houses off a cul-de-sac in general. So that's the most I would see them getting.
And my next question, I understood you stated that they would be responsible, that if Kearney requires the fire hydrants, that they would be responsible for paying for the installation of that.
Yes, and those fire hydrants would, in my opinion, just be part of the extension that they're putting in. They're not going to come in and put fire hydrants throughout your subdivision.
Okay. My next question is then, as a general matter, who's going to be responsible for the roads that run from Woodland, from A Highway to Fishing River Lane, and then from Fishing River Lane north to this extension? Because those roads are shot, and the Clay County Highway Department we've been asking them for 3 years to fix them. They have not. There's potholes in them. You got to drive around through the yards to get there. They're still not fixed. They came out one time and put some filler in the potholes and basically didn't even bother to clean them out, and that lasted about 2 months, and they're a mess. So there's 4 houses now presently on that section of Fishing River. If they build it, there's gonna be 4 more. There's gonna be traffic, there's gonna be builders, there's gonna be equipment that's coming through. The roads are shot now. Who's gonna be responsible for taking care of that when the highway department for Clay County won't even do it now?
So currently, it's maintained by the Clay County Highway Department.
No, it isn't. That's a mistake.
That's who's responsible for it.
Yeah, that's a better word.
Yeah.
That's a better word.
I didn't say how often they maintain it, I say they maintain it.
Gotcha.
So, a couple different things there. So, as part of that planning and zoning case, we'll reach out to Highway Department for comments. So, it's not uncommon for the Highway Department to request the developer do off-site improvements. So, they could ask the developer to overlay your road. I'm not saying they're going to do that, but that'll be part of that review. So, if this is approved, I would recommend that you reach out to the Highway Department and say, hey, I understand this plat is going to be coming down. Are you going to require them to improve the existing roads? Now, the part that they put in, so they're going to have to get rid of this temporary cul-de-sac. That's going to go away. They're going to extend that road north and create their cul-de-sac. The developer, who's the applicant, will be responsible for maintaining that portion of the road for a 2-year period. They're responsible for snow, fixing potholes, whatever, for a 2-year period. The county inspects it at the end of that 2-year period. If it's in good shape, the county accepts it into the road system, then the county highway department maintains it.
Okay. Well, and I guess then it's, again, up to the highway department to determine, my concern is they're also going to say, because we're going to have equipment coming through, heavy equipment for construction and that type of thing, if residences are built on there, that they're not going to want to fix the highway until that's all done, which could be more years added on to this.
Well,
But I
they
guess-
could, I suppose they could put off, if they request off-site improvements, they could put that off until the construction of the homes are complete. But the condition of the road and the infrastructure will be a much more major part of the discussion if this makes it to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I would invite you, if this is approved, to come to those meetings, and we'll have much more detail about that sort of thing.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
That's the only general questions I have.
Okay, thank you. Any other general questions? Okay. So now we'll take opposition comments. Anyone that wants to speak in opposition to the variance application?
My name's Joe Murphy, 12310 Fishing River Road, Liberty, Missouri. I guess my main concern is the road is not good now, and if we put more houses back there, I mean, I live where I live because it's out there, it's nice and quiet. I'm just not for a road going through there where the road's already bad as it is. So, I mean, that's kind of my personal opinion. I know you didn't want that, but that's what I got, okay?
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Anyone like to speak in support? Last call. Okay. I'm going to close it for public comment. Would the applicant, is there anything that you'd like to add, hearing the comments that you've heard from the general public?
Really, and I know it doesn't pertain to the variance we're discussing, but as far as the maintenance of the roads and timing, and I believe, if I'm correct, we can't really get the final plat recorded until we get public improvements accepted. So whatever we have to do would have to be in before we actually get the final plat recorded, which then conveys the property to get the building permits. So if there is a requirement besides just our cul-de-sac, that would have to be completed prior to that, so.
Thank you. I didn't ask the staff, have any other questions of the applicant? Okay, I'm going to close the floor. Any board discussion on the application request, the variance request? Questions for staff, discussion amongst board members, concerns?
Approximately, the existing street being there, approximately how long is it? The one they're talking about, the interior.
We're, you want me to speak?
I think
Get me-
Director Jones is going to measure.
Yeah, give me
I thought you
just a
mentioned it
second.
earlier.
So from about the center point there to the end of the cul-de-sac is roughly 800 feet. And we'd be talking about, they would extend it, you know, whatever that would be, 334 feet roughly, up to here.
Any other questions?
I do have a quick question. So I can see where, is it Riverview Estates? I think, are you back up to Riverview Estate? What is it to the north? I guess it'd be to the northeast.
Oak Brook is not too far. Let me get there. So this is Oak Brook here.
Okay,
And this is a large unplatted property. Same here, just larger properties.
so the cul-de-sac at the top of the screen, that's Oak Brook.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. No, it's tough.
Other discussion, the board, questions?
So really, I think what I'm hearing from you all is the concern with the condition of the road and traffic. Are those two, is that a true statement? Okay.
Please.
And I think we've closed it, haven't we, Mark?
From the floor, the time to ask questions.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Now it's you guys discussing. among
All right.
yourselves.
But I think that's what I took from
Yeah,
the
I just
comments.
wanted
Yeah.
to be clear.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is there any way we can limit the development of this property to just this?
Council?
By passing the variance, you mean?
But
Can we-
that's the variance, having in the variance, that no more development can happen.
So on that 109 acre tract or 106, can we add a condition?
That's a planning and zoning decision.
Well, I'll read the section that talks about conditions for variances. So under 151, 3.12 variances, it says conditions of approval. In acting to approve a variance, the Board of Zoning Adjustment may impose conditions deemed necessary to eliminate or minimize any potential adverse impact upon other property in the area, or to carry out the general purpose and intent of this land development code, so long as the condition relates to a situation created or aggravated by the proposed use and is roughly proportional to its impact. Such conditions may include site design requirements and time limitations on the variance. So I don't,
The answer is yes, right?
the way I interpret that is you could put a condition on the variance.
These will be adequate for condition.
I wouldn't recommend putting a time limitation on a cul-de-sac, please. But I think you could.
I think that would satisfy our opposition somewhat.
We could put a condition on it, but in what sense would that tie the hands of a future request for a variance? Because it's simply then going to be a variance to that condition. And they already would need to come for a variance to change the platting anyways. So it seems to be a bit redundant. It's not going to, in perpetuity, prevent that from being developed.
Only thing I could see happening is if the state highway department let them build something off of A, and they could bring a straight road back and put a U-shaped road in, you know, to one in, one out.
Sure, but
You know, that went up into that 106 and then back out, but they'd have to replat the whole thing.
they'd have to replat it, but that wouldn't affect the residents currently because they wouldn't be using that road.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking 100 years though. I mean, it'll long, this decisions we make will outlive us. You know,
This is
so,
true.
you know. All right.
I'm just not convinced that we can put in a condition that is going to tie the hands of future boards.
I think just the physical geometry of the cul-de-sac, I think will eliminate that. I think.
Yeah, and keep in mind,
I don't think it's necessary.
so my mic just died, but keep in mind, you're only, if you approve this, you're only approving a 134-foot variance. So the only way a future developer could get around that is, I think I heard Mark say it, is if you're able to put in an intersecting street right at that property line, which wouldn't make any sense because you're not going to get, unless you control these lots that these other folks own, unless that developer controls that, because you're not going to want to put a street here and then not have lots on the south of it. So in effect, the 134 feet kind of puts a condition on it anyway, if that makes sense.
That's the idea, is to limit just what comes on this cul-de-sac. If another road comes in, fine, maybe no more.
But if they want to develop that 106 acres, they're going to have to get another variance. They're going to have to come back.
Bring a road in.
Or
Another road.
Yeah.
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 Which, in that case, it still takes traffic off
Yeah.
of the other road, yeah.
As long as you have that stipulation, I think we will.
You want to make a motion with your stipulation?
I'll make a motion that, no future, no,
That's the tricky part, yeah.
no more property can be accessed from this road outside of the spectrum, already that.
And are we, just a clarification, are you limiting the existing house to accessing through the cul-de-sac as well?
Well, it's already got an access road.
But it could come off that cul-de-sac.
It could if it has road frontage on the cul-de-sac.
Part of it is.
Part of the problem is this is not platted yet, which makes it really hard to define. So it has to be,
Can you state the preliminary plat dated, whatever it's dated?
this hasn't been submitted as a preliminary plat. This is just
No. Okay,
what their plans are.
just what the plans are.
Yeah, this is not really,
Let's ask our legal help, how he would prove this.
It's your motion, I'm not sure what your intent is, so I can't really word it for you. But if you want to make a motion to add a condition, you would say you move to add a condition that, and then whatever the condition condition.
I'm going to make an addition that only these parcels can access this cul-de-sac.
Can we, is this preliminary plat, is this labeled as an exhibit of any kind? I don't see an exhibit number on this.
No, it's just included with the report.
I think,
So
no.
I would recommend, if we want to limit it, right now that plat shows 4 lots. So if you want to add a condition, make a motion to add a condition that limits the access off the cul-de-sac to 4 lots. That's the way I would put it.
You said not more than one party could use a drive. So you limit it to just one drive per section, right?
There would be 1 driveway per parcel,
Yes.
and there's four lots, so I would say limit it to a total of 4 lots that can access.
Exactly.
Cul-de-sac,
Okay.
yeah, yes.
So the motion would read a variance request of 134.26 feet to allow a cul-de-sac to exceed the maximum length of 1,000 foot allowed in section 151.87G, to allow a cul-de-sac of 1,134.26 feet with the condition that no more than 4 lots can access the property from that.
Drives to exit from this.
No more than 4 drives can access property from that lot, from that cul-de-sac. Is that your motion?
I make that motion.
Okay. I have a second?
I'll second.
Vote?
Buddy Rash,
Yes.
Christie Saligo Fleshman,
Approve?
Randall Morris,
Approve.
Larry Witten, and Chairman Mark Beggs.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And this goes before planning and zoning on what date, Mr. Jones?
We do not have an application yet, so I cannot tell you that. But I would tell the folks that are neighboring property owners, please reach out to our office, and we can give you more details on that.
Is there any other business?
I do not have any.
Okay. Executive session, anything? Advice from legal counsel? Okay. I move to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
I tried to organize a little better last meeting. I didn't like how it went, so I decided to tighten it
Good
up.
to see you, Christy.